If you're waiting for the perfect moment to talk to your kid about sex, I want to tell you something. That moment is probably already behind you. And that's okay. It's not too late, but it is time. Here's what most parents get wrong. They think of this as one big conversation they need to have at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right words, but that's not how this works. The families who navigate this best aren't the ones who had one perfect talk. They're the ones who had 100 small, imperfect ones over many years. The research backs this up. Teenagers whose parents talk openly with them about sex and relationships generally make safer, healthier choices. Not because of one conversation, but because of many. Because they grow up knowing these topics aren't off limits at home. I know what gets in the way. It's awkward. You're not sure where to start. You're worried that bringing it up will give them ideas. But here's the reality. Your kid is already getting information about sex from somewhere. Friends, social media, and yes, possibly pornography. The question isn't whether they're getting information. The question is whether your voice is part of that picture. Because if it isn't, someone else's is. And that should concern you more than any awkward conversation ever could. Before you get into biology or mechanics, talk about what healthy relationships look like. What does it mean to treat someone with respect? What does emotional readiness feel like? These conversations shape how your child approaches every relationship they'll ever have, and they can start long before sex is anywhere on their radar. Consent is non-negotiable, and I want to be direct. Both your sons and your daughters need to hear about it explicitly, clearly, and more than once, not just as a rule they have to follow, but as a value they actually hold. Consent is ongoing, it's enthusiastic, and it can be withdrawn at any time. And when it comes to the practical stuff, don't avoid it out of discomfort. Talk about contraception, talk about STIs, talk about the emotional dimensions of sexual activity, because sex isn't just physical, and your teenager needs to understand that. In terms of how to have those conversations, keep them short, keep them frequent, look for openings, a storyline in a show you're watching together, something in the news, a question they raise on their own. And ask more than you tell. What have you heard about this? What do you think? Those questions invite real dialogue instead of a lecture. A lot of parents worry that talking to their teenager about sex sends the message, go ahead, you have my blessing. I want to put that fear to rest. Giving your teenager information is not the same as giving them permission. Think about it this way. We teach teenagers how to drive safely before we hand them the keys. Nobody thinks driver's ed encourages reckless driving. We are preparing them for something they're going to face whether we're ready or not. Permission giving says, here's the green light. Responsible decision making says, here's what you need to know so that when you're facing a choice, and someday you will be, you can make it with a clear head instead of in the dark. One hands over approval, the other hands over critical thinking, values, and facts. Your teenager is going to make decisions about sex at some point in their life. The only real question is whether they'll make those decisions informed or uninformed. And research consistently shows that teens who get comprehensive information from their parents usually don't become sexually active earlier. If anything, they tend to wait longer and make safer choices when they do. So frame these conversations as responsible decision-making, not permission-giving. Your teenager can tell the difference. Sometimes you do everything right and your kid still shuts down. They roll their eyes, leave the room, tell you they already know everything. Don't force it, but don't give up either. If they generally won't engage with you, think about where there's another trusted adult in their life who might help carry this. An older sibling, an aunt or uncle, a coach or mentor. Sometimes the message lands differently when it comes from someone who isn't mom or dad, and that's okay. Use it. A therapist can also be incredibly valuable here, particularly for teenagers who have questions about their developing sexuality that they're not ready to bring to a parent. A good adolescent therapist gives your kid a confidential, non judgmental place to work through things without fear of disappointing anyone. And if you find out your teenager is already sexually active, stay calm. How you respond in that moment determines whether they ever come to you with something important again. Lead with love, not alarm. Make sure they have accurate information and access to protection, and keep the door open. Here's what you're really building through all of this: a teenager who knows they can come to you is safer than one who can't. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to show up for the conversation imperfectly, repeatedly, and without judgment. That's enough. That's actually everything. The families who navigate their kids' sexuality most successfully aren't the ones who had the perfect talk at the perfect moment. They're the ones who kept showing up for the conversation, even when it was awkward, even when their kid rolled their eyes, even when they weren't sure they were saying exactly the right thing. That consistency is what builds trust, and trust is what keeps your teenager coming to you when it really matters. At Teen Therapy Center in Woodland Hills, we work with teenagers and families on all of it: the relationships, the identity questions, the conversations that feel too hard to have at home. We serve families throughout the West San Fernando Valley, including Woodland Hills, West Hills, Calabasas, Tarzana, and Encino. If your family could use some support, reach out for a free phone consultation. Our contact information is in the description. Thanks for watching.